enmeshment disguises itself as love.
For individuals who aren't so much aware of what an enmeshment would look like,
I'll help you. When you don't give somebody else the dignity of their perspective, that's enmeshment. When you take it personally that they see something different than you do, that's enmeshment. When you're enmeshed, you're not two forces of consciousness coming together in a meeting. And when you do that, when two forces of consciousness come together in meeting, they create this third shared experience, interdependence, as you're calling it. Can't have that in codependent relationships. Can't have that relationships that fall into that enmeshment. It's intoxicating in some ways because in some ways there is a lot of fluidity and exchange of connection, but in its highest form, in my perspective, it has just huge pitfalls, and it's bit us.
Welcome to the Heart of Man podcast, a podcast for any man seeking to live in alignment with his deepest core and lead a life of profound meaning and connection. I'm your host, Alex Lehman, and I'm here to empower you through transformative conversations, eye-opening insights, and practical wisdom. Join me now as we venture into the heart of man. Let's dive in. Relationships can be tough. No matter how much love, care, or willingness is present, difficulties will inevitably arise. So how do we show up when our core childhood wounds come to the surface? How do we lead each other in conflict in a way that inspires connection rather than disconnection? How can we honor our desire for deep intimacy and union while also staying true to our own individuality and sovereignty? These are just some of the questions that can surface in romantic relationships. In my desire to engage in an open dialogue about these subject matters and more, I'm excited to be inviting my first couple onto the podcast with a returning guest, Amir Khalighi, and his wife, Keri. Now, there are many reasons why I wanted to have both of them on the show. What I can share here already from my observations is that Amir and Keri have truly traversed the fires of romantic relating. Both of them bring decades worth of experience from their previous marriages. They were both initiated into parenthood before meeting each other, and both had to humbly acknowledge when their relationships were no longer working. Their realizations led them on their individual journeys of discovery and healing, which ultimately brought them together, fostering the marriage and family they have today. And while I met Keri for the first time on the day of our recording, I've known Amir for over 2 years as a mentor, and I've been continuously inspired by the love, devotion, and commitment he embodies every time he talks about his wife and family. In our conversation, I was drawn to hear about the failures, successes, and lessons, hopefully inspiring and educating all of you who are listening in the process. Here, we dive into their journey, how they met, the phases they had to go through to create the marriage they have today. We also explore their perspectives on the challenges faced by the men and women they serve, as well as the struggles and lessons they've learned within their own relationship. Amir, known for his work in embodied masculine that reaches men worldwide, and Keri, through her profound guidance of women back to their essence with the way of the elements, are both recognized and acclaimed leaders in their communities. I deeply trust that you'll gain immense value from our stories, insights, and the lessons we've gathered on what works and what doesn't work. Now, let's dive into the show.
All right, welcome back to yet another episode at the Heart of Man. For today, this is round 2 with Amir alongside his wife, Amir Khalighi. It's an honor to have both of you on. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
So, I mentioned to you guys before we started rolling, and when you first mentioned to me, Amir, that you guys are going to be in Bali, I had this vision of us coming together and have a deep dialogue around relationships. And before we start rolling, I mentioned to both of you that relationships, especially when I speak with a lot of the men that I work with, that seems to be the realm, that seems to be the field where a lot of difficulties occur. And ultimately, when those challenges occur, a lot of the men are like, I don't know what to do. Because there's such a depth of complexity in terms of what's occurring. just beyond as well, like the superficial or surface level challenges, there could be, let's say, traumatic imprints, maybe a lack of guidance, a lack of just having role models in the realm of relationships. So a lot of individuals that I find are feeling very lost and don't really know where to start. And so with that, I find this really unique and beautiful opportunity with both of you, considering that, from my understanding, you both met each other in your 40s. You both were in marriages before you met each other, and you as well had children before you met each other. So there was this sense like, wow, they must have really gone through it. And they must have really had their challenges, obstacles, lessons. And I wanted to bring two people in that understand, something about relationships and as well have gone through it. So thank you to both of you for agreeing to come on. Amir, we've had you on the podcast before, and for anyone listening in, I highly encourage you to listen to the podcast with Amir. Considering that this is our first time getting to know each other, Keri, I just want to give you the opportunity to, first of all, introduce yourself to the listeners. Share us a little bit about you and what you do in the world. I know you have a company called The Way of the Elements. And I'm curious to hear, what would our listeners need to know about you that makes this field or this area of relationships so important to you?
Well, as long as I can remember, the only thing I knew I wanted was to be a mother, have a family. I do have the way that I give my offering to the world is through my company, Way of the Elements, where I work with women somatically, mostly through embodiment, to really come back to a belonging to themselves. This, of course, ripples out into relationships, but the way I see it, it really starts here. I also am very passionate about tea ceremony, so that somehow gets woven in. But the biggest role that I see, besides just belonging to me and to life and to nature, is being a wife and being a mother. That's just top priority for me. So it's an area that I'm deeply, deeply passionate about, have done a lot of research, study, growth, both in like learning ways of communicating and doing work on myself. And then there's nothing, you can do all the learning you want, and then you get into it and pretty much like the shit hits the fan and you learn by walking through fire. And
Right.
I've walked through a lot of fire.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, thank you for giving us just a little bit of a snippet of who you are and what it is that you do and what you just love. One of the places where I would just like to begin, and it's a very open question, but one of the things I'm really drawn to hear a little bit more about is your individual, I'm going to say, relational journeys. And not so much in terms of maybe specific events of what happened. Feel free to share if that feels valuable, but I am curious to hear about what are some of the lessons that you've had to learn along the way. What were some of the obstacles, maybe woundings that you've had to integrate into your life? And finally, on the moment when you both met, I wonder as well if there was maybe particular elements that you've had to overcome to really bring each other as well into each other's lives. So there's that piece that's really alive for me. So Amir, why don't you start out with that and
Sure.
kick us off, sharing a little bit about your relational journey.
Thank you. And thanks for having me back again. And I'm excited to sit here with my wife, love of my life. I've been really in 3 relationships for the past 30 years. So I like to go deep when I'm in it. And I think for me, and I shared a little bit about this in our previous podcast, but I think I didn't want to come to terms with the fact that my previous marriage had come to an end, and I fought tooth and nail to hang on to that way beyond its expiration date. And there was a lot of suffering that went into that. There was a lot of suffering. And, I had my reasons. I had everybody telling me that, you need to leave, you deserve better, you got to move on. And I didn't want to. I didn't want to because I had a daughter with my previous wife, and I needed to decide on when I was going to make that move. I suffered quite a bit in that dark night of a decade, I think. There was many needs that I didn't have met within myself. And I simply accepted that instead of honoring the needs that what were my needs, instead of speaking to them, I think. And that was a complex situation. And there was other reasons and motivations for why I did that. But subsequently, when that relationship came to an end and I fell into another relationship that satisfied some of those needs, to the point where I kind of blinded myself to aspects of that relationship that were not in alignment for me, and that came to an end. And the pain of all of that, in conjunction with my eldest daughter at the time moving away to college, that grief and staying with that grief really crystallized for me what I did want in my life. It brought a sense of clarity of what I did want in my life, the type of a woman that I did want to be in relationship with. And in a way, I fell into a deep, 6-month meditation around that grieving, yearning process. I rendered poetry. I fell into my heart. I fell into the clarity of what that was. And I really believe when we express that yearning to its fullest capacity, which involves keeping the heart open, it becomes the songbird. It becomes the calling. And I really truly believe that that's how I called my wife into my world. And she appeared out of thin air. I mean, out of thin air. I couldn't have orchestrated meeting her. And it's, and it was just a beautiful story, and the timing was right, and I was ripe, and I think she was ripe. And when we met, it was clear, like I knew. I mean, it's a beautiful story. We actually courted for almost 60 days before we met each other. We didn't speak to each other. We didn't see each other.
Is that something that you guys just want to flesh in right now, actually? Like how you both met? And you guys get to coordinate how you want to do that?
Yeah. She tells it better than I do.
All right. Keri, let's go.
All salt and pepper.
I kind of like it when he tells it and then I get to correct you.
But here's the thing. We have proof of who's right and who's wrong, right? And we'll get to that.
We do. Well, I'll start and then you can kind of come.
Sure.
So, well, a little bit of my relational story will lead us up into.
Sure. Yeah. Why don't you begin with that, and then you're happy to share.
Yeah. So it's interesting when I know that you've only been in 3 relationships, and when you said that just now, I was thinking, wow, like, because I've just been in like 4 relationships. So I used to call myself a serial monogamist, and I guess I like to go deep too. Relationship is, like I said, really just like wired for it, like deep connection. So I was in a 7-year relationship in my teens, and that went into a 15-year marriage, and then little dating, and then I met Amir. But throughout that, if I was to really just nutshell some of the themes in my relational journey, there was just this maturing that needed to happen for me, this maturing of like shedding a lot of the masks and the people pleasing and really coming home to myself. And that's such a long journey for all of us. I mean, we're all really just trying to do that, I think, at the end of the day. So again, this idea, this theme of like really deeply belonging to me. And in that, I mean, could speak for hours about what that entailed, but a lot of work, a lot of meeting myself in childhood wounding and trauma and things like that. And then just coming also into a deeper layer of what it is to be a woman and my sensuality. And that whole world opened up a lot of like this deep, deep belonging to me. And then once that was intact, I woke up to a lot in the marriage that I was in. And that began about a 4-year grief period where I realized, oh, wow, this is not working. And we had 2 kids, so, oh crap. Because I vowed I would never get a divorce the way my parents had. So there was that crossroads to come to terms with, which took about 4 years. And at the end of the day, what had me finally take that leap of ending the marriage was this, I guess it's kind of like a flame in my chest of like what I really, really believed that like a true meeting, a true partnership would feel like. And it's really interesting. You mentioned your poetry. Anybody listening that wants to hear something really delicious, is Stay With Me on SoundCloud. Mm-hmm. So Amir rendered this poem when we first met. He wrote and rendered it. It's on SoundCloud. It's called Stay With Me. And he talks about this flame in the chest and kind of speaks epically about 2 souls that maybe travel through lifetimes and then find each other again. And it's a bit of our story, but it's really beautiful. And
I'll see if I can add a link to it.
yeah,
That'd be great.
it's so beautiful. But I literally jumped off this cliff of ending my marriage because I really believed, I felt this resonance that I believed in this love. And then I recognized it when Amir came into my field. And so that sort of begins the story of how we met, which is really ironic because I'm not a big techie social media person. And we met on Facebook.
Of all places.
It's not as cheesy as that.
It's not. The story is beautiful. So I would help me capture the beauty of what it was. So I was ending a 2-year. I'd been divorced for 2 years and was dating somebody for that time, and that was coming to an end. I think you were ending. You were.
I was
ending.
traveling. I was.
Somehow the algorithms, I don't know how we became friends. I think a few communities overlapped. So we were friends on Facebook, but at that point, life is interesting. When the energies align, things start to shift. The algorithm started Amir in my feed, and he was traveling in Egypt and Turkey, I believe, and I've traveled that part of the world. I love travel, and he just started to come in, and I went down the Amir Khalighi rabbit hole, and he was a father and a martial artist and a poet and a sober man at the time, and all just this delicious mix of qualities. And we started to, I think I commented on a birthday you were having. I commented on a poem that you posted.
Well, you commented on my travels. So while I was traveling, you dispersed some comments in there.
So the crux of it is we slid into the DMs. I sound like an old person now.
Yeah, that's totally. I'm gonna help. So I came back. I thought I was gonna reconcile this previous relationship. I still had I was like, okay, I'm gonna fix this other relationship. And very shortly after, the clarity of that was done became clear. That became done. I started to fall into just even more grief. And I think it was one morning, I was just like, I don't know. Somehow I remembered Keri's comments on my Facebook, and I was like, oh my God, I'm feeling so incredibly lonely. She is so beautiful. I need to reach out and just throw something out there. And I said, thank you for commenting. I slid into your DM. I said, thank you for commenting or following me on my journey or whatever. And she said, I hope your return home, you've been acclimating well. And I said something like, breakups are hard. I was letting her kindly know that I was single. So we started to chat. So she said something about hey, I get that. When I'm going through that, I really turn to my medicine purse, poetry medicine purse. And I was like, oh, what's a poetry medicine purse? And she started pulling out these poems.
Because you had posted a Mary Oliver poem that I had never
that day, yeah.
that I had never read, and she's one of my favorites. So we started to exchange poetry, and I'm like, ooh, this is fun. And
Right. And then it was like 3 days of continually messaging each other back and forth. And then, I don't know, day 4 or something, she sends me a message, a vulnerable share. Please, I don't know, read when you have a second or something. And it said like, hey, I'm starting to have feelings for you. This has to stop because I'm actually like still in a relationship. It's coming to an end, but I'm still in one. And all I heard was, I'm interested. And I said, I sent her back another message saying feelings are mutual, and totally honor that. I actually don't want to start anything that's not clean. So here's my number if anything ever changes. And a few days went by.
This could be like a 2-hour story. We need the
quicker
5-minute
version?
podcast version.
Yeah, let's flesh out the quick one.
So we basically started corresponding she got out of that relationship. We decided that it wasn't time for us to get together. So there was a poem by David White that talks about a 60-day period to allow the maturation of this apple to be ripened for eating. So we said, okay, we'll wait 60 days and then we'll see each other. No talking, no meeting each other, no seeing each other, but we can communicate by text, messaging. We lasted 45 days. She eventually one day said, hey, I'm done with the workshop. I'd love to, like, are you open to seeing each other sooner? I said, yes. And she came to my house, and
by that time, it should be said, by that time, we were
in love.
Deeply in love, which many people, and if I was on the outside looking in, I would think, oh, that's like fantasy love. And I think for many it could be, but for us, it feels like a re-meeting of love. And
yeah, when I saw her, I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, because I was already emotionally invested. I was already all in emotionally. And then by the time when I saw her, I was just like, I had to catch up physically, which took no time. I mean, she's incredibly beautiful. And I was just like, I'm in. I was all in. I was clear. There's always this talk in our community about claiming your women, which sounds very kind of draconian, to be honest with you.
Right.
But I think the true essence of that statement is the clarity of intent. And from my perspective, I was absolutely clear. There was no questions. There was no game playing. There was no maneuvering. I was very clear about what I wanted.
And I think also, at a certain age, and we're also just going through certain life experiences. By that point, I've been through, 2 very deep relationships and breakups, and the stakes were high for both. And I learned a lot about myself and what I wanted and what worked for me and what didn't work. And so I learned to really pay attention to how anyone shows up. Like I think people are revealing themselves to us in every moment. And I really learned to pay attention. And so every way that even in our limited conversation, our limited communication, even though it was over typing and Facebook, I paid attention to everything, and it all really felt good and worked for me and really aligned with that flame. So here we are, many years later, and
almost 9.
Wow, what a ride it's been.
We have a kid together. We have a 6-year-old daughter together. We have we have 4 children between us.
Yeah.
Blended family.
Hey, it's Alex here. I wanted to take a brief moment to share some exciting updates with you all. As we've just passed the first year of Heart of Man, my team and I are more committed than ever to delivering even greater value. Our mission is to reach more listeners, bring on even bigger guests, and curate conversations that speak directly to the challenges and growth you're navigating. Plus, we're thrilled to bring you even more inspiring video content to deepen your experience. Now, here's where you come in. By subscribing to the show on whatever platform you're using right now, you'll not only ensure you never miss a new episode, but you also join a community of people dedicated to growth, learning, and leveling up together. If our conversations have ever brought you value, leaving a 5-star rating on Spotify and a review on Apple makes a huge difference. I cannot emphasize enough that it helps more people discover this content and feel inspired just like you, but it also plays a key role in helping me bring on new and exciting guests. And if today's episode resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support is what fuels this movement and keeps it growing. Let's keep building it together.
As I listen to both of you, there's a few pieces here that are alive for me that I think could be valuable to speak of, which is definitely that quality of intent and the quality of choosing something and not being, I'm going to say, wavering with that and being really clear on that. And that seems to be a component of what brought you both together, but as well a depth of clarity, what it is that you both are available for and what not. And that seems like, you know, what you both were witnessing and seeing each other was really speaking to what it is that you're really wanting. And I feel what I often observe is, first of all, there is maybe, like in some individuals, there is that lack of clarity, but also there is maybe still, I'm going to say, particular childhood needs that are seeking to be met. And so often when there is a bit of that initial spark, there is that sense of like, oh, the hormones are kicking in and it feels as if like that is being met, but there is something, there is a depth that's missing in that. And I wonder as well, like what's the, because I've heard various individuals speak of that, the value of taking things slower. Mm-hmm. And so considering that you guys didn't even meet each other for the first 45 days, I wonder how it actually maybe even influence your experience with each other, because yeah, I mean, it can be so easy, or I hear that very quickly. I've been in those experiences myself where we can come in red hot from the beginning, but I really question that now. And I really question of what that does.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, normally you would say like, yeah, just what's the rush? Take your time. But yeah, it worked for us. And it's actually one of the things that I really love about Amir. I match you in this somewhat, but you're kind of next level with like when you know what you want, there is zero hesitation and you go for that. And that happened with that happened in our relationship. And I see you do that in your work and your like how you create your life, basically. I love that. And I love that you swooped us up and you know, when you were saying that, Alex, when we first were corresponding over that Facebook chapter, there was a woman that was a friend of mine and also knew Amir, and for whatever reason, I think because Amir was in a like ending something and healing from something, she felt very protective of him. And I will never forget, she came to me and she's like, as a mother, like, what are your intentions with Amir? I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I intend to love him better than any woman has ever loved him in his entire life. Like, it was just so clear. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not here to snack. I'm not here to like mess around. I'm going to love him better than he's ever been loved in his life. Like, what are we talking about here?
This is absolutely true. So in that 6-month period of me, like really getting clear on what I wanted, I went big. I asked for what I wanted. I wanted a woman that loved me better than she's ever loved any man in her life. I called that. I wanted that. You know, I wanted to be met in love. I wanted to be met in the depth of where I wanted to go in love.
And he is a lover. He's a big romantic lover. Has such a huge, deep heart.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, one of the places I'm really drawn to go now is I want to hear a little bit more about what you guys observe in, whether it's in your clients or just in the realm of people in your immediate circle, or maybe just as well what you guys are seeing in the collective in terms of as well as the challenges that are occurring in relationships.
Yeah.
Oh,
Want me to stab?
sure.
I think there needs to be some discernment around whether something is complete or whether you are hitting an edge that you need to work on. And I think people can't differentiate between the two, and they leave like because they hit an edge. Sometimes the inner work that we do can be had within relationship. I actually advocate for that, and when I work with couples, I think it's potential, but sometimes you can't. Sometimes you need to be on your own before you're ready to re-engage. I think navigating your personal work within a relational dynamic is where most bombs are exploded within a relationship. And learning how to take ownership of your stuff, your shit, without projecting it.
What does that look like?
Good question.
It's a great question. And what I can say is, like, for me, sometimes if I'm feeling needy, let's say, and she's not available for whatever reason, my work is not to criticize what's wrong with you. My work is to tend to that within the relationship. Now, that's not always easy because it's so much fucking easier. Just fix it. just pet, like, soothe me, comfort me, right? So I think there's a lot of pitfalls that can happen. There's a lot of bombs that can go off in this field of, look, a really good relationship is gonna be one where your shit comes out, your stuff comes out. And if there's love there, if there's deep love there, then you're gonna have the incentive to grow, to confront yourself. Take ownership, I think, is huge. Taking ownership of our own shortcomings, not always easy. I mean, I know I've projected onto my wife probably more times than I like to admit. But coming to terms with what's going on with me, what do I need? What do I need? And tending to that and being responsible for that.
I think that, like, if we go back to just examining what do we think a relationship is? And I think that, myself included, sometimes still get it a little off. So just the definition or the expectation of what we think a relationship is, if it's coming from this place of this fantasy of, like, oh, I'm going to meet that person and they're going to complete me and we're going to ride off into the sunset, or whatever kind of Disney thing that we've picked up through media, or I don't really know where it comes from, but I think there is this collective idea that you're going to meet that person that's going to, I don't know, do something and give you something, and you're going to get something. And I just think it's really powerful to just kind of smash that idea and turn it around into, in a relationship, it's really about how you're showing up and what you're giving. It's really not about getting. And so with that kind of perspective, I think that's a really powerful place to come from. And like you're saying, just like having a certain amount of self-awareness around what our stuff is, because it's going to come up. It's going to come up big time, especially if you stay for a couple years and beyond. So when the stuff comes up, to be like, there's that thing. I know that's mine. And then to have the skill set and the support, community, mentors, coaches, whatever, to help. Like, we don't have to do this on our own, but to help us meet those places. And like you said, ask those questions of like, what do I need? And this is not to say there's not this beautiful sense of interdependence, but interdependence rather than like a codependence of like, fix me, meet that thing, like put my arm on because I'm walking around without an arm and you're supposed to be my arm, that kind of thing.
Can you describe to me what an interdependent relationship would look like?
I think it's knowing ourselves, knowing what we need, and being able to communicate and ask for that. Having a partner that wants to meet us in those places. But I had to smash through a lot of ideas that love is like, if they really love me, they'll intuit what I need. If I have to ask for it, it's less valuable. Worked through a lot of that. So to just like really, understand like, hey, I really would love your attention right now. Can you give it to me? Or that's just an example off the top of my head, but there are, millions.
I think also, if I could interject here for a second, I think we strive to create freedom for one another. We don't clip each other's wings. So if there's something that like enlivens her, and I need to step up and like cover something for that to happen, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it because I want her to feel free. Mm-hmm. Because if she feels free, then she's choosing.
Yeah.
If she's choosing, she's independent. If she has to stay, she's dependent.
Yeah, it brings to mind that I'm going to bring in a poem, the Khalil Gibran poem. I think it's about marriage, but he talks about these pillars and the winds blowing between the pillars. And so I see us as these beautiful, whole, independent, free pillars, choosing to be together. And, life, the winds, our love blowing between us. And there's something connecting the top. I forget the metaphor, but without those two freestanding pillars, it gets very enmeshed. And we actually we went through a chapter, I don't know, last year, like we realized, how'd we get into this enmeshed place? And that's no bueno.
Yeah, enmeshment disguises itself as love. Enmeshment disguises itself as love.
For individuals who aren't so much aware of what an enmeshment would look like,
I'll help you.
Yeah, please.
What do you mean you don't see things I do? What do you mean? How can you not? When you don't give somebody else the dignity of their perspective, that's enmeshment. When you take it personally that they see something different than you do, that's enmeshment. When you're enmeshed, you're not two forces of consciousness coming together in a meeting. And when you do that, when two forces of consciousness come together in meeting, they create this third shared experience, interdependence, as you're calling it. Can't have that in codependent relationships. Can't have that in relationships that fall into that enmeshment. And it's intoxicating in some ways, because in some ways there is a lot of fluidity and exchange of connection, but in its highest form, in my perspective, it has just huge pitfalls, and it's bit us a couple times.
What seems really evident to me, what you guys are really highlighting, is this importance of really coming into awareness of where our limitations are, where our challenges are, where our woundings are, and really as well learning to tend to those so we can really show up, I'm going to say, as a full self in the relationship. So there isn't so much of that demand of the other to meet those parts of us. And
Yep.
you know, there's other pieces that you as well spoke into, Keri, such as, of course, there's a cultural element. There is the, you know, influences of media, whether it's Disney, whether it's Hollywood, you know, whether it's the stories that we've been told by others. I think there is definitely big pieces around that impact us, that influence us. And there is this really intoxicating, enticing aspect of, I feel broken, and all I'm seeking, all I'm needing is ultimately this person that completes me, right?
Yeah, I think it goes back to our first podcast when I talked about not becoming attached to anything outside of ourselves for a sense of well-being. I love my wife. I actually have less attachments I have to her, the bigger the capacity for love that I can have for her. I think a successful relationship is recognizing when we're out of alignment, when we are projecting, when we are putting it on you. If you didn't act this way, I wouldn't feel this way. Yeah, of course, to a certain degree, that's right. But when your sense of well-being is predicated on their behavior, then something is.
Let me ask you both, what are the things that you've had to integrate, the things that you've had to own in yourself that you were maybe demanding or requesting from another, that ultimately supported and aided you guys as well in the relationship between the two of you? So Keri, perhaps you would like to start with that.
So I have this this wounded, I don't know, this wounded part of me. I don't know if it's a wounded little girl, but when she comes in, I like all the shutters and the doors and like a what is it, like a transformer, like I just like shut in, I withdraw, I go away, I'm very cold. And so I've had to really work with her and what what she needs in that moment. Understand like what, actually it doesn't matter so much what triggers it. It really matters like how do I meet that place. And then there's something in that where when the shame evaporates, then the ego can just say, like, I'm in that place. I don't have to, I've had to, without really being able to own that and integrate that, the tendency is to want him to make it better. Or if you didn't do that, then I wouldn't be like this, like you just said. So that is just a very vulnerable, personal example.
Thank you for sharing.
Which is so interesting because that is the very thing that triggers him. Like that's his Achilles heel. Like a withdrawn partner, withdrawn woman is very, very like
triggering.
It's just a perfect storm.
Yeah.
So it's brilliant. And I think
Whoever designed this thing is a maniacal genius with a sense of humor. Yeah. So as soon as that happens, then it hits on this part of me, because I in my previous marriage, I was with someone who was, who withheld emotionally, and I vowed not to be in that. I was like, but just so you know, there's even deeper layers. I mean, that's actually, there's even deeper layers of needs involved with that. So when I sense that a part of me is like, fuck this, I deserve better, I know what I need, right? And that whole fucking tape starts to play.
And then that is like taps
That
on my thing of
taps on
like,
too.
I'm not allowed to have my feelings. I can
Right.
Like that's another piece.
Right. So it starts to ricochet. Now, it's taken us a while to become familiar with this. What are
Dance?
What are those games that you ding 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 ding?
Pinball. Pinball.
Pinball. So this pinball scenario that happens. So I think the most important thing is, we're in pinball. Pinball's happening because it happens in every relationship. Pinball's happening. Pause. Pause. Everyone go to your fucking corners and like
Tend to yourself.
take out your
Take care of
binky, whatever
yourself.
you need to do. Tend to yourself. Get resourced. And when you come back, we did this Gottman workshop
We're
together.
plugging Gottman.
We're plugging Gottman. They've done some fucking good science, man. Gottman's done some good science.
John and Julie Gottman.
Yeah. And, you know, when we can return and lay some foundational credit towards each other and begin to allow the other person to express themselves and have the capacity to be able to actually go into their story without abdicating, without abandoning ourselves, you know, then we can begin to disenmesh from that trigger bonding, I guess.
Let me poke a little bit here
Sure.
because you know when you say, you know, let's take a pause and everybody go into their corners. First thing that arises for me, easier said, harder to do.
Fuck,
you
yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
I want to hear a little bit more about how can we actually do that, because I know this stuff, man.
Yeah.
I still react.
Yeah.
You know, I still go into that place where I don't pause, right?
You're like,
I've seen that
I
in
don't
my
want this fight to end. Don't leave.
Or one person says pause and the other person is like, yeah, you're just like, this is what you do. You like abandon, you're leaving,
Yeah,
you're
I
giving
get
up
it.
on it.
Yeah.
Do that thing you do. Meh, meh.
I think
Not you. You never say that.
I think hopefully at any one given time, one of the partners has got a little bit more in the bank account.
Yeah. The
Someone's
person that
gotta-
has the most does it because they can.
So one needs to be more resourced. That's what I'm hearing.
Hopefully.
Just like 1 or 2% more. Usually both people are, you know, not doing so great, but one of the two is just a word, like a keyword like penguin, or like you figure out what your word is. You just say the word and the other person doesn't have to like it, but it's like,
Pause.
it's like pause.
But they have to be willing to receive that.
Yeah, or not, or it just gets really messy sometimes. You know, then one person, let's just say, says penguin, and it's like, I love you. Like, the key is like saying, you know, I'm gonna come back in a half hour.
Yeah, I think it's really
And-
important to like communicate, like, I'm coming back in 15 minutes.
And it
Not-
doesn't
not-
always look clean. Like the other person doesn't always like, oh great, thanks for putting a pause on it. You know, sometimes it's just messy.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing as well that it's also required to have that be okay to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we also need to know how to like have good fighting rules.
Yeah.
Like there've been a couple times we fought where I've crossed the line, and there've been a couple times where Keri's crossed the line, and I've had to be like these are off limits. Like you can't, like she's like, hey, these are off limits to me. Or I'm like, hey, these are off, like we can bring in some weapons, but we're not going to use this.
Yeah. Talk to me about communication and making such agreements. Like what's the importance of that, and how can, you know, for anyone listening, and how can they, you know, maybe at least initiate in that journey of navigating conflict on a better way?
That's all you. She's just a better communicator in this realm than I am, so I'm all ears here.
Well, I mean, it just seems like common sense. Like, don't be mean. Don't be mean. Like, there's no name calling. There's no, like, I mean, it seems silly to say it. I feel like everybody knows this stuff. But I'll say it.
They'll appreciate it.
Okay.
I bet.
Yeah, I mean, there's just certain things you just don't do, because this is what I think it's easy for me. I don't know for everyone, but I'll say how I do it is I pull back in a perspective, so I'm looking at it from my future self. And it helps me a lot, because when I'm in it, it's just, it's really upsetting. So I pull back and I'm just thinking, don't act like an asshole. So like you're looking back, your future self is going to have to make amends. Just
Self-preservation.
yeah, like make it a game. Like, okay, I want to win this thing, so whoever's less of an asshole wins. So don't don't call names. Don't bring up stuff from the past. Stay in the thing.
Stay present.
It never, I don't think ever in the history of relationships has helped when you brought up a past thing. Like that never de-escalates the situation.
Totally.
You always do this. You never do this.
Yeah, like
Totally.
like words like that. Don't use language like that. But again, like looking at it from the perspective. So in the moment you're there, but there's also a part of you that's looking at it from the future. So I guess maybe just creating a witness for me is really helpful. And I do this thing. I don't know if you know that. I do create this game for myself. Like whoever is like the biggest person or the most generous wins. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just like do what I gotta win.
I kind of like that. Just gamifying relationship.
Yeah.
Gamifying a little bit. I really see a lot of this. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think, once we're triggered, we're in that kind of enmeshed state, right? We're like, however you want to label it, trauma bonded, trigger rested. But if I wasn't, I'd completely be okay with whatever, experience she's having, be able to hold that space, be able to be empathetic. But once we're like tipped off, that once we're in these trigger spaces, that's when it gets.
Yeah, I mean, I see it. We've just devolved into not even devolved. I mean, it's human just to be in this wounded, younger, scared place, and at that point, the only person that's going to save us is us. It's not going to be that other person. Hence the just taking space, and just from a nervous system standpoint, resourcing ourselves.
Yeah.
I think, in the height of an upset or a tiff, whatever you want to say, I mean, the heart rate goes up to a certain point, and the Gottmans have actually brought science to that. Like after the heart rate and the activation is up above a certain area or level, like nothing gets
Nothing
resolved.
good is coming out of that.
So to just take some space and resource, it's helpful when both people have that understanding and information too, like in an agreement, like, hey, this is going to happen. Let's like make a plan before it happens, and just an agreement. Like when we get to this place, one of us will say, hey, let's take some space. We'll tell each other how long, we'll come back. Does it always work out that way? No. But hopefully like 90% of the time we can agree to follow the rules.
Yeah, I love that. What I would want to add is that what I've noticed is that, when I enter these like survival responses, there can be this sense of, or this tendency, this desire to make it oppositional, me versus you. And then it can be this sense of like, you're a threat to me. And then there is this desire of wanting to protect oneself, and everyone has different ways of doing that. We can go into the survival responses: fight, flight, freeze, appease. I think there is definitely a lot of value in what you both are speaking to around understanding, I'm going to say, basics around nervous system regulation, and then as well noticing the signs of, both nervous systems being aroused. And I think that is something I'm just so greatly grateful for, that, I have this background within nervous system regulation. I put a lot of focus towards understanding polyvagal theory, understanding kind of the activation cycle. So for me, there was this deep recognition, all right, when we're in a survival response, no talking is going to serve us at all until we're back in a regulated state. So trying to sort anything out in the realms of dysregulation, it's not going to serve both of us. So resourcing ourselves is absolutely essential. The other thing that's really been alive for me, which has really supported me, especially in my last relationship, has been this understanding that when we're both in I'm going to say in a survival state, I think there's definitely a lot of value in what you guys are saying. If one person can stay a little bit more resourced, that can definitely help. But then the other thing that is as well alive for me is that this person isn't against me, and we're both on the same team.
Huge.
And there is maybe an obstacle right now, and there's a challenge that we may be having, but it's us against the challenge or us against the
Yeah. It's
obstacle.
huge.
And it's not us against each other.
Yeah.
Huge.
And I think one thing that's really served us is this idea you brought up before of like, it's us, but our union creates a third thing. Our relationship is the third entity. And so if, the relationship is the umbrella above everything. So even if we're in something and I'm not particularly liking Amir, or you're not particularly liking me, like we can do something for the sake of the relationship, even when our, little selves are not necessarily liking the other person. It's like, what is going to serve the relationship? What's going to serve our love? Because we've fed and really tended to and believe in this entity of our love, and even we've got our 3 words, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
We treat our relationship like a garden, and the garden has walls, and the garden needs to be tended to. And I don't want to piss in the garden. I don't want to piss in the water. It's like and that takes individual. One piece that we're really both really good at is we're the integrity of how we hold the relationship. We're not out of integrity. We don't leak energy outside of our space. We're very protective of this garden. Mm-hmm. And trust me, in the past 9 years, forces, situations have wanted to crawl over the walls, break through the walls, circumstances, whatever it is. We treat this garden like this is our resting place. And even if we have a fight that's really maybe nasty or whatever, we really try to clean up our messes.
not even like it's a resting place, but like this garden is the most precious thing in existence.
Like we hold it
the most
with
precious
reverence.
thing that could ever exist.
Yeah. So it's like, it's
You're-
reverence.
Yeah, it's reverence, and you are. I don't know why I have it that it's harder for men than women to create those, like a really solid, non-leaky container. I don't know why I have that.
I don't know. I don't know.
But
if
you are like rock solid, and it's so trustable, and it feels so it just feels so good. Like that's true. Like there are 0 leaks in our garden walls.
And
For people who wouldn't understand.
Yeah, like I don't
this
fuck
language.
around. I don't flirt with women. I don't do.
Your attention
you
is
don't
not elsewhere.
entertain.
My tension. I'm not leaking. I'm not playing. I'm not intriguing. I'm not playing games with other women. Even
And-
like innocent game. Innocent. I don't.
And I think it's very natural when somebody sees 2 people share this love. The love has like this radiance or this light to it. Like we all want to belong to this love, right? And so I think it's very magnetic, and I think just naturally, and maybe with not even any malice, but I'm sure many, many women are attracted to you and our love and test, or I think a lot of times it's very subtle, but even the subtle ones.
Yeah, and it's
just-
fine. I mean, people do whatever. It's like, you can't stop a temptation from coming in, but you can certainly have a choice in how you work with it. So, like, do what
love
you need
using
to do.
our love. I love using it as to inspire people.
Inspiration.
Like everyone, may everyone find love. May everyone find love and refuge in this belonging to love with a partner.
Yeah, in this incredibly tumultuous world, to have a safe haven of like, yeah.
Yeah. This conversation reminds me a little bit of our first podcast together, Amir, where we spoke about the importance of being connected to something greater than ourselves. And it seems like this third entity, the relationship that gets created when 2 people come together, it is that bigger thing that we're as well to some degree in service to. And,
Yes.
and also to some degree where we're willing to bring maybe sacrifice or
Yes.
bring our generosity, even when our, I'm going to say, little selves don't want to in that moment
Yes.
and want to,
You're-
you know,
that's
play a
it.
temper tantrum. So yeah, that's one of the things that is alive for me. I would like to transition into a question that I'm really keen to ask you both. So two-part question, which is I'm wondering, what would you guys say is the number one key component that has really supported you guys in terms of your sustainability in your relationship? And then what is one maybe obstacle or difficulty that you guys had to learn to overcome within your relationship, if you're open to sharing that?
I mean, we can just bubble with this, but I really feel like we're devotional in our love. We're both very devotional. We're devotional beings anyway, the way I think your makeup is in my makeup. We're devotional beings, and we bring that into our love. So the way I love my wife today is a building block of all the ways I've loved her from day one, and I loved her from a high ground from day one. So I'm devotional in the way I see her and the way I am with her. Second is fucking play.
You stole my answer.
Play.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that a little bit? I mean, it's like play.
It's just so important. I mean, life is fast and it's hard and it's sad and it'll just smash the life out of you if we let it. I'm not even bringing in, the second part of the question is like, I think that my biggest challenge is how do you do family and 4 children, it's a lot, and have beautiful, thriving businesses and have a thriving, alive marriage. That to me is always the challenge. Mm-hmm. And play is my number one, or our
remedy.
number one antidote.
Yeah.
So,
Why is that so important?
in big ways, sometimes we have big play, and then how to also bring small moments of play so it can be injected into, well, it'd be nice if it was every day, but I don't know if it is. But that's the intention.
That's the
That's the
intention.
aim. What was your question?
Yeah, why is play so important?
Play is so important, I think, because it brings us back to this state of like where there's no agenda. It's just pure enjoyment, and we get to remember all the yummy ways and reasons that even brought us together in the first
We
place.
see each other.
And we get to
we remember.
It's like children's, playing children. There's something like so alive in the moment, so juicy, so fun. And I guess in this regards, sexuality can I guess be brought into the play realm. I think sex is really important, and luckily for us, that's a realm that just comes really easy to us. And I'm speaking beyond that as well into other forms of play and enjoyment, pleasure, living life together, being deeply in the moment together.
One of the workshops we do at Beyond Polarity, we bring play, and people are like freaking like painting each other and other it's like it's alive. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah, there's nowhere to
go.
There's no agenda. It's just like let's
frivolous and frolic, and I think it's good medicine. I think it's good medicine for a society that's so fucking driven. Mm-hmm. That's so driven. Like, we're all fucking tired. Like,
yeah, it's very nourishing.
It's
Play is
nourishing.
nourishing. It's very nourishing.
So the challenge, I think, is balancing and knowing what needs tending to, whether it's I need tending to, whether my relationship needs tending to, or my work needs tending to, and knowing and being able to decipher. That's, and that's a king in his, in his power brings order to his kingdom. And that order is the discernment of the magician, knowing where to put his attention, what needs attending to. And it's, it's the warrior that takes the action and like making sure the walls of the kingdom are secure, and this needs tending to. I got to make this a conversation. I got to set up this thing. And all of that ecosystem is held, that is held collectively between the king and the queen.
Well, I was going to say, let's bring in I was going to say, if you're going to speak in that way, like the queen and the oracle is huge in our
huge
in our ecosystem too. It's that whole trite saying, but it's true. Like behind every powerful man is a powerful woman. Like the oracle piece is very important.
Yeah, I deeply trust my wife's intuition. I deeply rely.
Except when I said just a minute ago, like turn left, and you were like, "What?"
Oh yeah, and now with directions.
Navigate to our villa.
I trust my wife's intuition
left.
with the exception of directions.
There's this thing with driving, man. Like I feel that as well in me,
I'm just
like
go left. What is it called? Passenger driver. What is it called?
Backseat driver.
Backseat driver.
Yeah.
But
Anyway.
All right, talk to me about being in service to each other and being generous to each other. Because like one of the things as well that you brought in, Amir, when we did our training together, you spoke about this idea as well of creating containers for each other. Whether I think there was one experience where you spoke of where something was occurring, or you had the sense that there was something occurring for your wife emotionally, and you created a container for her so she could really feel and experience what's really alive for her. And it brought this whole conversation out for me around this idea of being of service to each other and being generous and this idea of ritual as well. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and how that as well plays a role in your marriage.
Me or you? Go play.
Well, I mean, this word, even just speaking the word generosity, just sparks a lot for me, because I think that's one of the key pieces in any successful relationship, and in our relationship. You are an incredibly generous person, a generous man in many ways. And I mean, it's from everything with food, providing, and by providing, I don't necessarily mean like the way that the West looks at you're a provider, although you're an incredible provider in that way. But I think of providing heart space, providing safety, emotional safety. That's a big one. And the idea of ritual and containers is something that we really love, because it just feels like an elevated space and time out of time. And it also feeds into that idea of play for us, ritual and play. But anytime I think we can take something can be like loaded, emotionally loaded, create a container or a ritual around it, and there's a possibility for making art out of it, through expression, and there's like deep transformation is available there when someone's expressing, someone's witnessing, and then again there's a third thing, the magic comes out, something transforms out of that alchemy.
Could you give us something concrete in terms of making art of such experiences?
Yeah. So, I mean, let's as example, let's say sometimes we do this thing where we pick songs for each other, and sometimes we'll just sometimes we call it calling songs. So call songs, we'll bring a song. Sometimes we'll sit, listen to the lyrics or listen to the tones of the music and just be in it.
But the precursor to that is you call song if there's a turbulence in the field. Like if something needs to be like, I'm going to pull you out of time. I'm going to pull you out of time, and I'm calling song.
The rule is anything could be happening. He could be in the middle of a session. If I call song, everything drops.
So you got to know, like, it's got to be
sacred.
for the highest good.
Calling song is sacred.
Yeah, calling song is sacred.
but it's really powerful because of that. And this meaning has been created in it of, it's almost like I can see like white flags being woven, in calling song. It's like everything stops. I'm going to call this song. And it could be that one of us can move or offer expression or movement or whatever, or just offer the soft space of the front of our bodies and our hearts. And, often when we call song, like one of us or both will be crying, and it's just a space or a container where that can happen. And it kind of it rains, like everything clears, or we offer something beautiful and vulnerable to the other, and true to the other person.
If I see her struggling with like kids and she's running on empty and she's at her wit, or I'll call song, and I'll have a song that'll touch that. And because it touches that, it gives her permission to go into what she's avoiding feeling. And it gives her permission to be in that space.
And like from my point of view, it's so yummy because it means like, oh, you see me. So
like you care for me even when I can't see what I need.
And depending on the song, like if you maybe pick like one of my favorite songs, I also have a song medicine purse. It's like, oh, like this space was just created where I get to like be in my song and move or emote or whatever, and it's just like, oh, you really get me. You really get me. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's important to elevate. I mean, it's important to set apart. I mean, we could fall into the mundane rhythms and get lost in that.
Oh, you can just get eaten up.
So we have date nights where we are like, it's our night. It's our night for 8 hours, that's our date night. And we have it at home mostly, our kids asleep in one bed, other two kids are maybe with their dad, and we're painting each other's faces and, just having, playing music and remembering that flame that she talks about, remembering that like we are here to nurture that flame. It's a gift. It's a gift to see that within somebody else, and it's a gift to recognize that within yourself, and it needs tending to. It's a fire that needs tending to, and I think people suffer because they forget. They forget about the flame that brought them together.
Well, listen, we're already an hour and 10 in. I mean, our time together just flew by. But it's been awesome. It's been incredible. I really appreciate the generosity as well of your time and being willing to come together in this way. And it's been wonderful to hear your journey, but as well your perspectives and your rich insights and wisdom that you guys had to share. Before I ask my closing question, I would just love to ask both of you, where can our listeners find you? And I wonder as well if there's any offerings that you guys want to bring an awareness to. So
my website is wayoftheelements.com. Currently, I'm working mostly one-on-one and in mentorship with women. Anyone local to LA, I do tea pours there. Would love to pour tea for you. And I'm working on a program, but that is yet to come. So,
awesome. Amir?
Embodiedmasculine.com would be the place to start, and hover over offerings, and you'll see everything there. And check me out on Instagram would probably be a good spot.
Sounds amazing. Yeah, I'll make sure to put both of that in the show notes. And just want to honor both of you for coming on. Thank you, Keri. We haven't met before, but it was such a pleasure to spend the last hour and 15 minutes with you. Again, thank you, Amir, coming for a second round together and just for being in my life. Yeah, my closing question to both of you would be, what would you both say to anyone listening in that would love to, let's say, flourish more in this realm of love and relating, and what kind of supportive message would you want to provide to those listeners, men or women?
I would say to keep that flame alive. So don't give up hope. If it's something you're yearning for, it's already there in you. It's yours. So tend to that flame and don't lose hope. Just believe in that. It's already there.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I want to say that dream big in love. Dream big in love and expect great things. Tend to your own heart. Get clear on what you want. And if you're in relationship, tend to each other's flame. If you're not in relationship and you want to be, go deeper into your yearning as your calling.
Yeah, what I'd want to add, there seems to be a great potency in owning that desire, owning that yearning, and not closing oneself off of that, not minimizing that, not rejecting that. And I've observed that in myself as well, observed that in others. So yeah, appreciate you as well bringing that in. All right, for everybody listening in, if you have listened up to this point, I hope you guys got a lot of value out of this conversation. In case you want to share your insights, if you have any questions, feel free as well to reach out to all of us. And if you as well want to share this message on your socials, make sure to tag us. And until next time, signing off.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Your time and attention is truly appreciated. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to stay tuned for my upcoming episodes. And in case you know somebody who would find this episode helpful, I encourage you to pay it forward. Finally, if you've personally been receiving value from the show, one way you're able to support this podcast is by leaving a 5-star rating and a written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Not only does this help more people find the show, but it also supports me in bringing more incredible guests on for the future. I'm your host, Alex Lehman, and until next time, signing off.